I am here, and today we are going to talk about what do you do when your circumstances suck, when you're like, I am just waiting for the kids to go back to school, or I am waiting for this pandemic to be over, or I'm waiting for that person I work with to quit. Or to get a new job or to get to the other department. That's what this video is all about. What do you do? Because I think it's a really important conversation to have for many reasons. Just a couple thoughts on this. Number one, I am obviously not in my typical studio. I am usually not with my regular camera or my lighting crew. I'm having a day. I thought I'd actually be back to the lake by now, but I am visiting my aunt at her retirement home. And so here we are. Right? And I took my mom to the hospital. Thank you, everybody who has been asking about how she is. For those of you who have been following along, you know that she had open heart surgery in May. So gosh, time flies. We've been doing this a long time. And she had 100% oxygen today. You know when they put that little thing on your finger? She hasn't had that in probably her life. And by golly, I think mine's only at 98%. So she is doing incredibly well. And we're really pumped about that. So thanks everyone for that. Of course, when you're dealing with heart surgeons, sometimes they can show up hours later than the appointment. So here I am, contingency plan, no problem. And I realize they don't actually have air conditioning here, I don't think. I thought that was like a law now, like they had to in Ontario, but so I might be a little glowy, folks. All right, let's talk about this important topic. This is how it came to be. And by the way, I'd love to hear from you. How's your Monday going? How's your week getting started? Let me know. Okay. People will say this a lot, and it's like, well, it'll work itself out when, the kids are going back to school. That one I hear a lot. And, when we're finally back at the office. And, one of my fundamental beliefs is that we can't bounce back. And that is not just a term when it comes to resilience of like, you're going through a tough time, you're going to get it, you're going to be fine. We can't go back to any way that it was. And counting on that is actually doing you a disservice in your ability to find your best path forward. And one of the things I think is so hard is we don't know what's coming. We don't know if, there's COVID-21 or if there's COVID, esque something, we don't know what the Delta variant is going to do. We don't know if we have a wave 4 going. We don't know if there's going to be another natural disaster. We don't know if the kids are ever going back to school. We don't know if the person who you work with is going to be a lifer at the company that you're a lifer at. We don't know if any of those circumstances are ever going to get better. And so my frustration when people say, well, I can figure this out when X happens, is chances are X may not happen, or it may not happen in the way you want it to happen, or in a way that is empowering to you. And it certainly won't necessarily make how you feel in your day-to-day life any better. You may still feel stressed or disorganized, or like you're over your head, or like you have too many things on your plate, or that you don't like your new coworker, or you don't like your new boss, or you don't like the people who you work with. Like that could always be there. And so what my hope for you is that we can find you a path that you're good no matter what. You're good no matter if there's money in the bank account. You're good no matter if you're being distracted and interrupted all day with your kids. But we got to find a way to work and find you to be happy and productive and feeling confident with the circumstances of now. Because if we're waiting for that thing to change on the back end, you could be waiting a really long time to find your happiness. And I don't want that for you. Like and if you know my story at all, like I went through this. I was like, okay, how do I, it could be in many times in my business when I just didn't have any business coming in, right? And I'm like, bank accounts at zero, my prospects are nil, right? Like I used to do a lot of roller coasting riding in my business. Like it'd boom and then it'd be famine and I wouldn't save during this time to compensate for that time. And but you know what? I finally figured out that I don't need my emotion, my being, to be interrupted or pulled off course based on those circumstances, because it doesn't do any good, right? Being in a bad mood because money's tight, or being in a bad mood because of, you insert your circumstance here, is just giving so much power to the thing that you have zero control over. So what do? Well, let's get crystal clear about what the circumstances are, exactly what you're dealing with that sucks. And, it's like, okay, well, I can't get any work done because I'm at home and my kids are there all along day. Okay, great. That's too broad to solve, because the only way to look at something that broad and solve it is to go, okay, well, either get rid of the kids or get rid of the work at home. Right. And if you're in the pandemic or your office won't let you go back to work yet, or whatever the case may be, then you've got to find a new path. You got to figure out, how do I make it great with this? So let's go really granular. Not the kids are home and they're constantly interrupting me. It's like when they're hungry, they're interrupting me, or they're interrupting me because they want this, or because they're not self-stimulating, or because they are, asking me for X, or, I don't know, just figure it out, or they want to know something. And then, because when we are so clear, and you might have 10 problems that are leading up to this whole thing that you think is actually stressful. But if we could go at each one of those things, if we could get rid of 5 of them, if we could troubleshoot 5 of them and find solutions to activate, we could arguably, depending on how it works out, get rid of 50% of the problem that is causing you to feel really stressed and not get the work done. Okay. So the whole point of this conversation today is, how do you be happy with the circumstances that you currently have, and not wait for the circumstances to change in order for you to be happy, productive, and at peace with yourself. So situational awareness, critical. Second, then, I want you to look at all of those situations that are causing you the stress, or are making the circumstances suck, and get really compassionately curious about how you're responding to them. What are you like? And forgive this, but it's an important question. Perhaps, how are you making them worse? So if you get interrupted by a child or a spouse or a parent or your dog or whoever, and you react very negatively, okay, does that just pile on? Does that just make it harder than it needed to be? Instead of, you've been interrupted, can't control that, except for, we want to put some solutions in to mitigate that. So we'll talk about solutions in a second. But now there's the interruption, which is the stimulus. And then there's our reaction, which can be very simple, of like, take 2 seconds. I'm busy right now. Can I answer that later? Or is it urgent? Is there somebody bleeding in the house? No. Okay. We'll talk about it later. Okay. So that, very calm, no drama, no argument, didn't make anybody feel bad, etc. Or, as I've had some friends who have shared with me, or it can get rid of, like, I told you to stop interrupting me, and like really angry and frustrated. And then you've got this whole other layer of, well, with my snowman analogy, it would be you've got a whole other layer of snow to deal with. So let's just be really compassionately curious. Figure out, what am I doing to make it potentially harder than it needs to be? Okay. So that is the second thing. And maybe you love the distractions. Maybe you have set it up so that and I am picking on the kids today. I don't know why. Maybe that's a lot of the conversations I've had lately with people. But sometimes it feeds you. Sorry, I don't know where to put my arms here. Sometimes it feeds you, right? Like maybe you like being interrupted. Maybe it gives you a chance to take a break because you're not taking any breaks. Could be that you don't want to be doing the work you got to get done. So, you're kind of enabling it and being okay with it. So, these are the tough conversations, but what are you doing within the circumstances that you can't control to potentially make them harder to deal with? And are you spending any time strategizing solutions? Which brings us to the next part, which is the solution activation. So if we're clear and we're very specific about the different situations that you may be facing, your response to them and how you potentially may be making them worse or how you may be making them better, yay you, then we can dive into solution activation. Now, let's go here. We've got a comment. A good question for the second point might be, is it an external obstacle or an internal obstacle? Very, very nice. I like it. And this is so critical, right? Because internal versus external, there's a level of control with both. And there's a level of a lack of control with both. And you may say, but Allie, of course, if it's internal, we can always control it because it's our decision how we respond. And I'm going to fight back a little bit on that and say, well, I'm not going to fight. Let's be honest. Allie's a lover, not a fighter. I'm going to challenge you on this, though, because I do love a good challenge. I think as much as we can control or influence our internal, we have, as part of the human experience, so many default mechanisms in how we show up in our lives. Like that takes the work, and that takes deep work and committed work and little slips here and there, right? Like it's part of the process. So yes, we can say we have 100% control over how we react to a situation, but I'm not going to give you 100% because I think I think our default settings override our willpower until we do the work to break and interrupt the pattern. I don't know what this is about. Oh, goodness gracious. So thank you for that. That's a really good question, right? Like, is it an external obstacle or an internal obstacle? Because if it's external, okay, the solution activation needs to figure out, how do I mitigate this external obstacle? If it's internal, the question then becomes, what do I need to do to mitigate this internal obstacle? And if it's the work you need to do, you have more control over doing the work, implementing the work. Let's just not discount our default settings and those patterns that show up day after day after day. So the solution piece, if we've gotten really granular on the situation, then we can go over, after the self-awareness exploration, we can actually go into the solution activation. And for each granular piece of the bigger circumstance, we can start getting really creative on how we're going to do that. But you could come up with a list. Let's say you have 10 things here that are, robbing your productivity or, causing your circumstances, like, maybe things, your spouse is miserable, maybe your kids are miserable, maybe they're itching to get out into the world. And, they're just not quite having that level of interaction that they need to sort of be healthy and vibrant children. I think that's fair to say for many of them. Let's see what else Greg has to say here. Okay, a good question for the second point might be, is it an external or an obstacle? Okay, we did that. The go-to emotion response is always what creeps through when the door is left ajar. I think control is usually an illusion in the first place. How do I make this bigger? Oh, sugar plum. Oh, I want to see. You're going to have to type the second half of that. When the door is left ajar. Yes, it does. The go-to emotion response is always what creeps in. These are our defaults, right? It's what shows up. And what we have, that's part of the fun journey. That's the figuring out how to go. I wonder if I go over to LinkedIn, if I can see the question or your comment. Here, I can see it from here. So let me read the rest of Greg's comment. It says, the go-to emotion / response is always what creeps through when the door is left ajar. I think control is usually an illusion in the first place. We just feel more comfortable because it perhaps is more in our wheelhouse. I think that you're right, because as professionals, especially when we've achieved a level of success and we kind of have, a strong personality or whatever, you can put whatever words you want in there, it does feel safer when we feel we have a sense of control. And I think the key is we can have a sense of control. We don't have control over being controlling. Like, there's a very big difference between controlling and feeling a sense of control. One is very empowering and uplifting and puts you in a very confident mode. And the other is very controlling, is trying to control the outside circumstances and not being okay with the variables of life, which are inevitable. Anyway, okay. Then we get really creative about what are we going to do? Because then if the kids do go back to school, if the pandemic is completely over, if all of the circumstances and there's stop being all these big, world events that are global in nature, like not even global in nature, but just that are catastrophic for so many people. And like when you're watching the news, it's hard not to get anxious. It's hard not to get sucked into, is this the end of the world, the global, the world order or whatever, all of those things, right? I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but you know what I'm talking about. It's hard not to feel a bit sad or a lot sad. And that's okay, but in your little world of your home and your work, your world may be huge, but your perspective, how do you get to be okay? And I truly believe it is possible to be at peace even when, there's a shitstorm around you. It happens. It's part of our lives. Anyway, those are my thoughts today. And this is part of the resilience equation because, part of resilience, which is what I speak about and is sort of that woven theme between all of my content. The whole point, I believe, is the daily resilience. Sure, the big things, we're going to get through those, and that's like grieving's going to take over, and our instinct is going to take over, right? If you lose somebody you love, there's no cheating it. You got to go through it. But the day-to-day stuff, all of that, it's up to you. Right? If you can figure out and crack your code on how you need to show up and how you can feel confident and, just calm and a sense of control, again, not controlling, in the midst of it, that just opens your whole life up to see a more optimistic point of view, to feel more productive, to have more time to just relax and enjoy, even when the circumstances suck. Because there are times in our lives when they do suck. But getting caught up, like every time somebody says to me, well, when this happens, then I'll be okay. No, we can't wait for that external circumstance to find you a path to be okay. You'll be waiting a hell of a long time. What do you think of them apples, I say? See? You can always smile. Anyway, okay, I have gone on long enough, I say. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Resilience Reset, here every Monday through Thursday at 3:15 p.m. Eastern. I come to you live from wherever I happen to be, and today I happen to be in a retirement home visiting my aunt, who I help take. I'm her essential worker, so I have the blessing of coming and spending time with her and doing her shopping and all of that. So, yeah, very exciting. I am here with my this desk is actually pretty cool, eh? This is old school desk, I'll tell you. I think that's my great grandmother's or my great aunt's. I don't know. I'll have to find out. Anyway, as I lean on it. All right. Until next time, I hope you will be happier by stressing less and doing more and embracing the downtime. Don't forget to order my book called Take Back Your Weekends. Stress less, do more, be happier. And I am Allison Graham. I will see you tomorrow. Oh, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? Just for those of you who are still listening, I am going to review and go through the book Can't Hurt Me. I finished it this weekend, and it is awesome. And a little piece of it that it really just fundamentally goes against what I believe, so it'll make for a really good fodder. And it's interesting because by the end of the book, he came to the same conclusion of what I believe. And so we're very aligned, but for like the first 300 pages, I'm like, is this the right advice? Is this it? Anyway, so it's fascinating. I think it'll be a really good conversation. I hope you will be participating in the chat box. If you've read it, come prepared to offer your insights. If you haven't read it, come prepared to figure out if you want to read it and how you believe when it comes to the phrase mental toughness at the extreme. All right. Bye for now.